Welcome back, everyone. It is the Modern Sage podcast, and I'm Leah Guy, your host. As always, I'm very happy that you're here. We have another exciting episode today. Before we get there, let me just remind you that if you haven't started season 4, I encourage you to go back, catch up, and follow along with the story. I'm telling the story of my experience in the past few years of not just living in a haunted house, a spirited house, but the deep transformation that happened across generations, across ancestors, across realms and dimensions that I was blessed to experience and be part of. And also the real life kind of terrors and horrors that happened before that transformation took place. You can find more about me and my work and my courses and classes and books and so forth on my website, leahguy.com. And follow me on social media at Leah the Modern Sage. Let me introduce to you today Dimitri. Dimitri, I'm going to ask you in a moment to help me pronounce your last name. But Dimitri is the co-founder of the Spiritual Arts Institute in California. And he's joining us to have a conversation about energy, about aura, about our spiritual growth and what we can do to enhance that, to connect more deeply to that, and what it is to experience maybe changes along those lines. So Dimitri, I'm glad that you're here.
Well, thank you for having me on your show. It's a pleasure.
Yes. Now, how do you say your last name?
Oh, it's a good Greek name, Moraitis.
Moraitis. Okay.
Yeah.
Moraitis.
Yeah.
All right.
Yeah.
Well, so you and your co-founder, your partner, Barbara Martin,
Right.
are the directors, the founders of the Spiritual Arts Institute in California. And I know you have a deep focus there of teaching people many aspects of energy healing and emotional growth and spirituality.
Yes. Yes. I've been practicing this 40 years, and Barbara's been doing it, oh my God, more than 50.
Yeah. You've worked with a lot of students who have come to your facility at various levels, no doubt.
Right. Exactly.
What would you say for a person that isn't quite sure if they are sensitive to energy or have seen energy or auras, or just someone kind of seeking?
Well, it's interesting you ask that, because some people come because they've had an energy experience,
Mhm.
and they're seeking to understand it. That was a little bit my awakening. But others, just they've had the awakening, they know there's something more to seek. But yes, even after they start meditating or working with energy, they may say, I don't feel it, you know. But what we tell people is you don't need to see the aura to work with it. And as long as you're applying the principles in your life, some are just more sensitive than others, but it doesn't mean you're not participating, you're not engaging. And over time, you will become more sensitive. It will start. It is a little bit like a skill that you develop over time.
Yeah, it certainly can be. I know for myself, I've shared in several of my stories, I was also a highly sensitive person. And I think a lot of people that work in the healing arts are highly sensitive people. There's certainly a lot of empathic people in the world. But sometimes, and I know it was true for me, that when we go through very difficult or traumatic experiences, we develop a heightened sense of awareness in different ways, such as maybe energetically or auditorially or other senses that we have, and intuition and so forth. And it can be confusing, I guess, if you're not aware, you're not specifically seeking to grow your intuition or to see auras or to have deeper insights. It can be kind of alarming even for some people.
Oh, we all have the quality.
Yeah.
Everyone is it. They don't realize it. You know, let's say you walk into a room and there's this beautiful spiritual energy there, but you don't see it, but you just feel, wow, I feel great in here, you know. Well, that's you're picking up the energy, you're picking up what's going on. The place may look kind of plain. You could walk into a palace, and if there's a negative energy there, you could have it, you know, I don't know, I feel creepy in here. It's a palace, you know.
Yeah.
But our intellect sometimes says, well, just poo-poo that. You're in a palace, just enjoy yourself. But if you're a little more responsive, you say, I need to pay attention to this. Barbara was, I know we live in California, and we went to, when I first moved, we went to the Hearst Castle, you know, this huge castle there, and it's hours to get up there. And we came up and she said, I'm not going in there. Oh, something horrible has happened in there. I'm not even walking in.
Mm.
And then we found out there was, you know, probable murders and things that did happen. Well, she was picking it up even before stepping in.
Yeah.
So I didn't go in either. There was a lot to do outside, but this is being sensitive, right, to what's going on and responding to it. Because now it's different if you're going in harm's way. You know, if you're, let's say, working in a hospital, or you're a policeman, or you're doing something where you know you're going to walk into some difficult environments. But then that's a little bit like going into battle. You're prepared for it. But
Hmm.
when we're just engaging and being part of life, it's very important to also, you know, you can put spiritual protection around you so that you're not as bombarded, let's say, by some of these. Or let's say somebody's mad and they're trying to kind of direct that anger to you. You don't have to accept that energy, you know,
Right.
and that can help you not get entangled in the dramas that may be going on around.
Yeah. I often try to encourage my clients and remind them that um, if you're grounded, because sometimes we are not grounded and sometimes we're in a reactionary state, but if you're grounded and you feel really in your body, that the best thing that we can ever do for ourselves is to follow those hunches, those feelings, and those intuitions. There's been plenty of times I'm in the Manhattan area,
Oh
where,
my,
yeah, I got to hop on a train.
yeah,
And sometimes I just know that that car is not for me. I don't want to get on that train.
yeah, yeah,
And a lot of times we abandon our truth. We don't listen to ourselves. We call ourselves crazy. There's no rational explanation for it. But I always encourage people, just ease up on yourself and follow those hunches, because for one reason or another, maybe that's just not the right train for you,
yeah,
instead of
yeah.
having that reflect somehow poorly on us.
You know, the famous Edgar Cayce story, right? Edgar Cayce could see energies a bit, and he was seeing some people go into an elevator, and for some reason he couldn't see their auras anymore. That's like they disappeared, and he's got spooked out. So he said, "No, I'm not going in there."
Mm,
And it closed, and the cable snapped, and the people in there died.
wow.
I mean, if he had just walked in there, right?
Yeah.
So yeah, you don't know. It's as simple as, like you're saying, walking into a train. Well, maybe I'll take the next one.
Yeah, right. Just trust yourself,
Yeah,
what
yeah,
harm is there in trusting yourself? Yeah, even if it takes a little bit longer, just go ahead and trust yourself. So
right.
Dimitri, before we get into the other topics of energy and so forth, I don't know why I thought to bring this up today, but one of my biggest pet peeves that people in the spiritual community, or just people in general, say, especially with all the teachers and the gurus and so forth online, is when people talk about, like, they'll reference someone and say, "Oh my gosh, she's so spiritual." And it's a pet peeve of mine, because it's my belief that we are all spiritual and there is no delineation or judgment between the amount of spiritual we are, because we are spirit. It's kind of like saying, "Oh my God, she's so human." We're human.
Yeah, exactly. I love, but what did Taliyard de Chardin say? We're not humans having a spiritual experience. We're spiritual beings having a human experience. So
Right.
you're absolutely right. We are, and those people sometimes also divide it. They're saying, okay, here's my spiritual life, here's my earth life, and they compartmentalize, not realizing, like you're saying, it's all spiritual. And if you see even your finances and your job in that spiritual lens, everything takes on a different demeanor, and you start to feel more connected. You
Yes.
know, or anytime you're feeling disconnected, it means you're not connecting with who you really are. And yeah, it'll feel like you're on a lonely, deserted island at times.
Yeah. It's amazing how quickly our mind goes to judge ourselves and other people, but in particular, the comparison of ourselves to other people when we feel that disconnection, when we feel the energy of lack. And I say this because, and well, especially like in the story that I'm telling of the house and the experience there, people are talking about how brave I am, or and that kind of thing. And yeah, there's a certain amount of bravery that went on, but we're all brave. We all have courage. We all have empathy. We all have intuition. We all have spirit. We all have these things. The difference is that I can see is how we foster that relationship, and how sensitized we become to that relationship, just like any other relationship in our life. If you're married and you never pay attention to your
Right.
spouse and you don't
Right.
listen and you don't look at them and you don't spend quality time
Not a very,
together.
Not a very good marriage.
Not a good marriage. You might be married,
Right,
but
right, right. Exactly, exactly. Well, you have to leave time for this work.
yeah.
You know, it's like exactly like a relationship. If you don't spend time with the person you love, how do you deepen the relationship? If you don't spend time nurturing the spiritual you, how's it going to develop? The two things we often get when people are trying to start meditating, the complaint, oh, I can't concentrate, or I don't have time to meditate. Well, we used to say, okay, if meditating is your one-on-one time with the divine, are you saying you don't have time for the divine?
Mm,
You're too caught up in the affairs of your life.
right.
Make that the centerpiece of your day, and your life's going to go great.
Mm-hmm.
It'll fall in there. And if you're not able to focus, well, your mind is a little bit like a muscle. Just work on it.
Yeah.
Okay, today it was so much you strayed a little bit, but over time you can really develop that mind and get it focused exactly where you want it to be.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. It's so true. So, Dimitri, I'm curious from you personally. I'm talking in my story about the rituals that I put into place, both primarily at nighttime, but also in the morning, the prayers of protection, the rituals that I do. So, I'm curious from you, what are your daily rituals for your spiritual life, whether it's in the morning or midday or afternoon? What do you do every day?
Well, I certainly meditate every day,
Mhm.
and enough to really get into the flow of it. Those days where I short or whatever, I do feel like, oh, something's missing. I actually do an evening prayer before going to rest, because your sleep time is actually spiritually can be an active time. And yes, I keep the light around my house. It's your sanctuary. Sometimes energies can creep in. If I'm going somewhere, I will prepare, ask the light to go ahead to prepare where I'm going, especially if it's like something important. So I do try to keep mindful of the light, even in a meeting. Like even now I'm feeling the energy, flowing in right now as we're communicating. So the sense of the presence, and again, this has been working on this for years, to feel like it's not like I'm in my spiritual life now and then I'm not in it. I strive to try to keep everything in it. And when I do feel I go off, I do try to stop and say, okay, I went off base a little bit here. Let's get centered. Let's get back into the groove again.
Well, I'll confess that when I'm in my car driving around the city, I
Manhattan,
go off.
Manhattan. You
And
drive
Jersey
to
City and
Manhattan?
Hoboken and
Jersey.
Queens and all of it.
Oh my God. When I lived in New York, I didn't have a car. It's just, yeah. Oh,
That's
well, New York is an interesting energy. I always tell people everyone should experience New York at some point, and Manhattan in their life. There's
yes.
no place like it. Yeah,
Yes.
yeah.
I actually purposely came back here for this year to work on my new work, which is a one-woman show and a movie script and this podcast and so forth. So I wanted the grit and a little bit of
Yeah.
that, that frenetic energy that on the other side of me feels frustrating, but I know that I know how to manage it. But even still, when I'm
Yeah.
in the car, I feel a million miles away from my spiritual center.
When I lived in Los Angeles, I felt a little bit like that because everything is distance there, right? And then there'd be constant traffic, and you're
Yes.
like, and what used to bug me was like the rubbernecking, oh, you slow, oh, we're waiting an extra hour because you slowed down to see an accident that you had nothing to do with instead of just keep going.
Yeah.
So patience was a lesson there in driving for sure.
There's
Yeah.
always a lesson. And one of the biggest lessons, and I think you will agree with this, I was recently listening to this radio station, and they have a lot of feel good music and sometimes praise music and different things that I like. And one of the artists came on for an interview, and they asked her one of her biggest regrets. And she
Oh,
said, yeah, she said, I regret that I tried to keep it all together for my kids and not show them the full humanity of who I am.
oh, wow.
And when I think about that, especially as a spiritual teacher,
Right.
and like I'm sharing with you, driving in the car and, wanting to flip the bird to people and scream at people and stuff, there's definitely a part of me that judges that about myself. And I think, oh my God, what if somebody saw me, because I
Right,
know my behavior is poor.
right.
And then there's another part of that I feel compassion for and just relief that there's the human experience right there. You know, it's not all roses and butterflies.
Right.
And when we
Right.
pretend that it is, when it's not, we create a lot of trouble for ourselves. And I think those of us on a spiritual path, we can recognize when we're kind of off the path and when we're on it, and that we want to be on it more, but that we give ourselves enough grace, enough room, that when we veer off, that we're not beating ourselves up.
Well, that's so important, because if we're beating ourselves up, we're just getting stuck in it, right?
Mhm.
So you spilled the milk, you don't cry over spilling the milk, well, you clean it up, you know? So, okay, I went off the mark, but maybe what you can ask yourself is, well, what pushed my buttons? You know, why did that person get me so upset? You know, what was it about what they said that got me so upset? And then you realize there usually is a lesson there. Oh my God, you sounded like my mother when I was 5 years old, you know, or something, you
Yeah.
know. It was nothing even to do with them per se, but it was a trigger. And then you realize, well, that's the trigger. I can work on the trigger, and next time it may not happen as much, you know. So, but we have to give ourselves room to make mistakes. You know, if we think it has to be perfect all the time, like you're right. And when we do work with students and everyone keeps saying every week, oh, I'm fine, I'm fine, I get more worried about that.
Yeah.
That say, you know, I had a rough week. I had to really work through X, Y, and Z. And I feel like complimenting them. Well, you're doing the work. You know, you're rolling up your sleeves and you're getting into the closet that needs cleaning. You know,
Yeah.
that's what it's about. It's okay to do that. As long as you hold yourself in a positive light.
Hmm.
Don't identify yourselves with your faults or your mistakes or even your experiences. You're none of those things, right? You're this immortal soul, and it's growing. And when anything grows, like in school, we're not always going to get A+ on our tests. There's going to be mistakes, and that's okay.
Hmm.
The only thing we would recommend is, you know, and this is the inspiration we've gotten, is sometimes, you know, the higher would say, we see you making the same mistake
Hmm.
20, 30 times. So, okay, the mistake was made. Let's learn from it, not just go back and keep doing the same thing again. You
Yeah.
know, and if you see a pattern, then you know there's something. There's a lady we worked with years ago, and she would always complain that her bosses didn't appreciate her. And, you know, in the beginning, you're siding with her. Oh, you know, they don't understand how talented you are. But when this happens like 5, 6 times,
Right.
you realize, well, there's something else going on here. And it turned out she thought she should be the boss, and she was making their life difficult instead of
Hmm.
realizing, well, God is the employer, God is the employee. You're supposed to help this person, not challenge them, you know. But that was her lesson, you know, and to try to do that. And she was a brilliant woman, but she wasn't understanding the situation.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah,
That's a great
yeah,
point. Yeah. So,
yeah,
not to go completely the other direction, but I'm going to. um,
yeah.
what is your experience communicating with spirit or the other side, people on the other side?
Oh my. Well, that's a huge question you that's
Yeah.
there. Um,
Well, do you communicate with
yeah,
people on the
well,
other
the
side?
question is, okay, so in our work, there's kind of two types of communication. Okay. There's the psychic and the spiritual. So if you're communicating with a person, like you just said, that's more of what we would call a psychic experience. They're impressing you. If the divine is communicating with you, that's a whole different world. That's a different story. That's on a different plateau. So, you know, to give an example, when I moved into this one house. It was a probate house. You know, the person that had lived there died, and he died in the house.
Mm,
He died of Agent Orange. It was a very sad affair. This was years ago, and he was going to start his family and all of that. And I rushed in. I didn't do the cleaning of the spiritual cleaning of the house I should have done. And, you know, books stacked up, I mean, boxes stacked up everywhere. I wake up early in the morning with the sun coming in, and there's this man trying to, you know, choke me. And it's real going for it. And I'm thinking at first, oh, this is one crazy dream. And it's not. I'm not dreaming. I'm wide awake. There's a guy in there, you know, astral person that's still in that house. And it turned out it was him. He
mm,
didn't realize he had died. He's still in the house. He thought I was the intruder, and he was protecting his property. And it was 3 solid days of prayer to convince him it's time to follow the angels home. You're done with this earth plane now. You know, so those communications happen on that kind of level. If they happen, uh, there's nothing wrong with when those happen. Just some people look to those communications like for spiritual advice. And there we would say, we would avoid that. You can go to the divine. It is a different experience. It's the still small voice, not the booming voice. But that's the voice that really is that you want to pay attention to. And you kind of said at the beginning of the show, sometimes it starts with intuition and inspiration. It's a subtler thing, but that's the real power you want to be connecting with.
Mm-hmm.
There's a lot, there's a whole unseen universe there, right? We're all part of it, and it's well peopled, and sometimes those people are interacting with us, shall we say. We live in San Diego, and it used to be, there's a town that was a gold mining town years ago, Julian. It's been closed for 80, 100 years. She went down there as a tour, and she came up, I didn't go with her, with that shock on her face, go, well, I saw a guy down there still trying to mine for gold. Yeah,
Yeah.
right. So here's this woman communicating with him to try to get out of there. You don't have to dig for gold anymore. So it shows you when your mind is so focused on something, even when you cross over,
Yeah.
you can still be focused on that,
Oh, yeah. Well,
Yeah.
in fact, the town that I purchased this home in years ago, I was there just visiting, and I had seen spirit in actual form, a few times in my life before that, but not as clearly and kind of as you're saying in a just right here, right now way. This particular time in this town, there was a man with a very old overcoat on, like a cloak almost, and a cane, and he was kind of wobbling down the canal.
Oh, wow.
And this town is very old, and it's also very well known to be, filled with, it's a river town. There's a lot of collected energy in this place, and they do ghost tours and haunted house tours and whiskey ghost tour, every kind of ghost tour imaginable in these towns. And I saw him, and it was like he was going somewhere
Mhm.
and was just kind of lost,
Right.
and I turned to my friend, and I had my dog with me, and the dog was kind of startled, and my friend saw him too. And then by the time though we
Oh,
turned back
wow.
around,
That's a
yeah,
pretty strong apparition, if more than one.
yes,
And the dog looked like he was probably seeing it. They're very psychic, the animals. They can
yes,
a lot of that stuff. Yeah. Yeah.
yes. And but by the time we turned around, he was gone. I was going to approach him because I felt comfortable enough to do that, but anyway, he was gone. In this house that I'm telling the story of, it hasn't been a visible energy. And believe me, I did for the first 6 months, as much clearing
Thank
and prayers and light work and saging and everything that you can
you.
think
Yeah.
of, including priests and ghost hunters and other healers, because I thought maybe I'm too close to it. And it really took a while. I will say that I believe for my soul and my soul contract here, it was an experience that I needed to go through and participate in to resolve, but it was so many layers. There were so many different entities that weren't harmful, but there was the one that was very challenging, and it took a while to
Do you
work
know
with
what
them.
happened in that house? Why they were there?
Yes. Well, I've heard that the previous owner and also the women and another medium, all three said that the house at the turn of the century was a brothel, but not a traditional brothel, like a brothel that a man took young children, young girls,
Oh,
for
wow.
people who owed him money, and there was a lot of abuse there and a lot of prostitution of these young
Hmm.
kids. And so what was interesting when I bought the house, kind of like what you said, I was in a hurry to get in. It was right before COVID. So I didn't have on my spiritual hat and go, let me walk in here slowly and take my time and sense everything. I was just like, I've got to get my things in. But as soon as I got in, there was such a balance of this beautiful, childlike, peaceful, lovely energy. And then this
So,
yeah, this other energy that really came mostly in the dream time, but also some pretty major events that happened around the house. So,
wow. Wow. That sounds dramatic. Do you feel it's cleared now?
yes, I believe that I call him Edward.
Oh my. Uh-oh.
I know. Sorry, Edward's out there. But we had to give him a name for the movie because the script is
Oh,
kind of
Oh, wow. Oh, wow. So this is a over 100-year-old home you're living in?
Yeah. It's
Oh
about
my,
180. Yeah.
oh my gosh.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's
I'm
got
not
to,
here now. Actually, I actually took a break for a year. I'm in a new loft space now, away from that town, so that I could write and have perspective and do this kind of, just take a break. It was
yeah,
exhausting, I have to say. But I do. I feel the house and the land very different now.
great,
Um,
great.
yes, and I don't fear him coming back.
Right.
But the memory of it, it was
Oh, she says it's a 6-month ordeal, right? It took 6 months to get
yeah,
there.
6 to 9 months actually.
Oh,
Yeah.
wow. Yeah, that's a lot because people really don't realize that we do leave the atoms behind us. There's a famous story of a bridge in England where people, would commit suicide from. But
Mm,
the weird part is, and they had no idea, these would be different people. They would jump from the same spot.
wow.
It was something that, a negative energy had built up there, and here you are in this desperate state. You were somehow attracted to that negative energy, and that's where you chose to jump. And of course, then that makes the energy even stronger. So it can build up. So if you're talking about also something where there's multiple things going on, it wasn't like a single incident, then that energy keeps building up and building up and building up. And it doesn't matter. Barbara's friend years ago, she loved to collect antiques. And she was so proud that she snagged this Ming Dynasty chair, museum grade kind of quality and all of that. And she put it prominently in her living room. And after a week, she goes, Barbara, I've been feeling so uneasy all week. And now I realize it's the chair. There's something
Mm,
weird with that chair. And Barbara went over and tuned in. Either an emperor or somebody high up in the court ordered people to their deaths from that chair. It was an execution chair.
oh, wow.
And Ming Dynasty, it's been centuries since the Ming Dynasty's been there. They cleared it, but she did sell the chair in her case. She
Yeah.
she,
Yeah.
that teaches you there's energy in things, there's energy in places, and yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
But hopefully now you've got this beautiful home and you've got the energy, your energy, the way you want it in there,
Yeah.
and got it, and it sounds like you're making a movie out of it.
Yeah.
With
Yeah, it's definitely a beautiful transformation for sure. I'm glad you brought that up about the furniture because years ago when I did more hands-on work, I used to do energy clearings and so forth for people at their homes, and it was not uncommon to find, and sometimes it wasn't even antique furniture. The furniture and the furnishings is really important to
yeah,
consider when you're buying
yeah.
used stuff or antique stuff, or you're taking things from other people's house. There's a particular word actually for psychics who work with things. Do you know it? I can't think of it right now.
Psychometry? Is it psychometry? Is
It
that
might be
well, I
psychometry.
know I think psychometry, let's say if you give them your keys with your car that's got your vibration on it, they'll hold it in their hand. They can psych into you a little bit through the object because they tune into you through the vibration of your things. Yeah.
Yeah, maybe that is the word I'm looking for. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. No,
So
we do have these energies and we have to, if we know, let's say in a home, let's say even a past, sometimes it's a good idea to go to places where we have lived or areas where maybe not the most pleasant thing has happened and just ask the atoms of that just to be released. If there's anything still lingering in the atmosphere, we're radiating all this energy. And if we're radiating something that's not so great, we got to be careful. Even going to a restaurant, we ask, put the light in the seat you're sitting in. What if you go to this fine restaurant, but the couple just before you were having a huge fight at their table and all this emotional energy was there? Okay, they get up, the table is cleared, it's nice, but that energy is still there. And you get sitting happy-go-lucky, plop, you're right in that chair and you're right in that energy.
yes.
So you do need to be careful even where you go, because again, we are in the sea of energy, no question about it.
Yeah, and people forget, and I forget sometimes too because I get in a hurry and I was just like, I'm going to
Yeah.
run to the store, and then I may go to the store and come home like I felt great before I went, and now I feel like crap.
Yeah,
You know
exactly.
what's going on here? It makes me want to carry my tuning fork and my sage wand around everywhere I go. But you don't have to do that. You can do a lot of work with your intention and with the
Right.
light.
And light and protection and all of that. And anytime you feel anything, again, what's the expression? Don't rush in where angels fear to tread. If you don't need to be in an environment and you're not feeling comfortable, why go there? You
Mhm.
know, now if you have to go there, like you're saying, put your armor around you, put your light around you, you'll be fine, but because we also don't want to be like hermits afraid to leave our house because the
Right.
energy may not be right. We've got to live our life, right? It's interesting, the Bhagavad Gita, one of the great scriptural writings, right, of all time, takes place on a battlefield.
Mhm.
And the saintly soul is trying to tell the lead person why he must fight in the battle.
Mhm.
But of course, it's a battle of life.
Right.
We've got to be willing to fight the battle of life. And what you just want to do is gather up your armor, gather up your ammunition. And when you go out into life and things are happening, there's nothing else more satisfying than conquering something, right? A lady in one of our classes, she had a fear like a physical fear of crossing over bridges, over water.
Yeah. Right.
I mean, it was palpable, right? And
Yeah.
she had to cross over 3 bridges to get the work. She went to therapy for years. It helped a little bit, but after about 6 months of really working with the light and the energy, she said, one day I went to work, I didn't even realize I'd crossed the 3 bridges.
Mm,
She
that's
had
awesome.
conquered it. She had conquered it. And
Yeah.
that's what you want to do. If there's a fear, you want to conquer it. You don't want to be a victim of life. You don't want to say, look, the problem's out there, and this is a person that messed me up, and this is what, yeah, there's dramas that happen, there's crap that happens to us, but we're responsible for our life. And really what we must realize, it's not what's happening to us that's the measure of our spiritual maturity. It's how we're responding to it, how we're handling it. If we do have a bad moment, like you said earlier, I didn't handle it right, okay, I didn't handle it right, but I'll handle it better next time. Don't beat yourself up. No self-flagellation.
Right, right, right. Yeah, I used to own a healing center, and there was a storefront part of it. And the amount of people that would come in asking, what can I buy to protect me from negative energies? And I get it. But my
Mm.
response always was strengthen yourself
Yeah,
first. Strengthen
yeah,
yourself and don't worry about what's out there. Because
right.
if you're aware of self and aware and tuned in and vibrating at a certain level and in trust and in the light and so forth, you don't have anything to worry about. It's not that bad things aren't going to happen, because we live in a limited, bounded world of suffering, and the polarity of negativity and so forth is around. But we cannot live in that, as you say, the victim mentality, and being afraid of not just bridges and planes and sickness and so forth, but just our neighbors,
Yeah, because
yeah.
how you learn and grow if you're not experiencing life, if you're not
Yes.
taking a little bit of the slings and arrows of outrageous fortune, as Shakespeare would say.
Yes. You're very well read, Dimitri. I notice.
I guess so. I don't know. I tend to remember things I like,
Yes.
so I will. Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Well, before we end today, I want you to tell us just a little bit about your spiritual institute and how people can contact you.
Yeah, well, thank you so much. And again, thank you for having me on and all the great work you're doing. And Spiritual Arts Institute's the name of the organization, spiritualarts.org. We teach meditation and spiritual development. Our motto is helping souls grow.
And I'm just really grateful to have you on and have a conversation to encourage people, and reach out to either one of us if you need assistance. Thanks, Dimitri.
Thank you. All the best to you.